Nothing.
So
Okay.
I'll start with Concord. The Concord Public Schools School Committee will come to order. It is January 26, 2020. The meeting is being recorded. And over to you, Sarah.
And I will call the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee to order. Can we have a roll call?
Anderson is present.
Booth present.
About present.
Is that present?
Mustafi present.
Rainey present.
Wilson present.
And I would like to make a motion that the Concord School Committee and the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee will enter into executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and return to open session at 5:45 p.m.
Second for both.
And we have a second discussion. Those in favor, roll call, please, for both.
Anderson, aye for both.
Booth, aye for both.
About aye for both.
Mestad, aye for both.
Mustafi, aye for region.
Rainey, aye for both.
Wilson, aye for region.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, so we will be back at 5:45. Sound check, Sarah. Ooh.
She was still in the breakout room when I just left 10 seconds ago.
Think she might be stuck.
It's a long walk back to the main meeting room, you know.
Yeah, I think she got stuck. Okay.
She probably needs to dial back into this meeting.
So, yeah.
Oh, wait, there's a new,
Hi.
there she is.
It made me wait till everyone else had left to ask if I wanted to leave.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault. I delayed you then.
That's a tough breakout room.
Yeah. Sit in the corner until everyone else is done.
Sitting there just calling out, hello. Okay. Court, did you call us back into?
No, forgive me. So I will call the Concord Public Schools School Committee back into order, please.
And I will call back the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
And we will begin with public comment, and we will ask that people turn on their camera and make themselves known with name and address, or raise a hand and you'll be recognized. We're looking at the participant list right now. And seeing none, I think we will proceed, and we'll begin with the student representatives. Forgive me. Amy, thank you. Linda, thank you. We will ask you to unmute and introduce yourselves for the audience. We know who you are, but perhaps some of our audience does not. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a senior. And I guess for an update from CCHS is I guess the main thing is we just finished up first semester, which I think for me and Linda at least is kind of a big relief because now we have one semester to go before we graduate, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then we had a no homework weekend over the weekend, and then we just started second semester today, which is what's happening basically.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda, and I'm also a senior, like Amy said. And I wanted to kind of share something a little bit personal that doesn't speak on behalf of the whole student body. I recently, after the winter break, I went full remote, and I was doing the hybrid model. My parents and I just kind of sat down and we discussed, and we thought it just may be better for me to do fully virtual. So having experienced both in person or half in person and now being fully remote, I can really say that I can feel that my teachers are there to support me in the sense that if I need to reach out for extra help for whatever reason, it's still equal even though I'm not in school. Even when I was in school, a lot of the times if I wanted to go to a teacher's office hours, it would have to be over Zoom just because they wouldn't have a free room for us to sit in. And it is, I think, it's no surprise that when you're at home, you definitely have more distractions. So staying really focused and engaged in your class is slightly more difficult. It does really depend on the student if they're willing to really sit down and be focused, or if the teacher is like really engaging the class. Amy and I took presidency last semester. It's one of my favorite classes I was able to take at CC because Miss Davies, the teacher, she has it as a discussion-based class, and she really invites everyone to talk, and we get a lot of that out of that class because you're not just sitting there listening to a lecture. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions about either one of those experiences. But.
Well, this has been a long concern of ours, is can we see that teacher support for students is in a remote world what it is in the physical world. And we know the challenge for teachers, because you and I are experiencing those challenges too. So we're pleased that it's as good as you report. I guess the only other comment I'd make before I turn to my colleagues is we hope that I hope that in future meetings, if you have advice or recommendations for us as to how we can make a relatively good year in spite of all of our unwanted challenges, if we can make it any better as we finish out, because we're now in that third quarter, about to look at our fourth quarter and your graduation. We will be listening right up until graduation to your comments and your recommendations.
Yeah, and I think we all hope that we don't have to rely on this model for much longer, but that's not for any of us to decide. And I just think it's been really useful. I don't envy any of the teachers. I know their job's as hard as it is, and then you throw a pandemic at them and they have to readjust everything that they're so used to. So I've been pretty grateful with what I've still been getting the same education, but there is definitely a lot of extra at-home work, because being, that teachers only have half their students there some of the time. They don't get to actually see a lot of their students in person, because some students have been fully remote since the beginning of the year. It definitely is a little bit of a disadvantage for them, but I think I've just seen all my teachers give it all they got, and just making sure that that their students get the best out of their class, even though we're living in a pandemic.
I think one other thing that's different that I think is becoming more noticeable now is just like less class time, I think, because each block is a little bit shorter than previous years. And then now that we're getting close to like AP exams, it's starting to become more obvious, because there's certain parts we have to be able to cut out of the curriculum. It's like, if it's not on the exam, we can't really cover it because we just don't have time, because there's so much stuff we have to cover before the exam. So I think that that's something that we're starting to notice more now that we're getting closer to that time of year, but that's not too big a deal.
Yeah, I will say that with my AP classes especially, I think there's been, AP classes have always been a really rigorous course. I think students who intend to take AP classes know that going into it. And I think this year, especially just because we are put at restrictions with COVID-19 and how we can run school in our classes, we have had extras, just a little bit more of a workload in the sense of watching a lecture video at home rather than sitting in class and listening to a lecture, have the teacher lecture, because College Board requires us to do certain projects and labs that we have to get done prior to our AP exam, and just trying to fit that all in, like Amy was saying, before we take this exam in May. So there's a little bit of an adjustment with that, but I guess it is what it is, and that's what a lot of us students are kind of having to realize, and I bet the teachers are as well, that it just is what it is, and we kind of have to adjust anyways.
So I would characterize both of you as highly mature, high-achieving seniors. Not everybody is a highly mature, high-achieving senior today. For the student body generally, what's the stress level? Is it better, worse, same?
I think for seniors, it might be a little bit lower right now, just because we just finished a semester. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a weight lifted off our shoulders. Like we did what we could for that semester. It's kind of the beginning of a new one. So I think that's kind of what people are feeling, but it could be different depending on where people are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, second semester senior year is always something that we look forward to. And obviously it doesn't look like what we expected when we were little freshmen. I can't imagine, like people who are students who are sophomores now who had their freshman year cut off and now they never really experienced finals and finishing off a year properly, or freshmen right now who are dealing with freshman academy, and that's obviously something new. And then also doing classes on Zoom, which is also something new. I can't really speak on behalf of that. I will say, I do think my stress level the first semester was higher than what it normally is. And that's just partly because first quarter senior year is always really tough when you're applying to colleges. You're hearing back from colleges if you applied early enough. And sometimes if it's not what you expected or what you had hoped, it's obviously really upsetting. And on top of that, I don't get to see all my friends in school. So it was just a little bit of just trying to see the bright side of things and continuing to see the bright side of things. And also, juggling all my classes and the workload I had with that. But I think a lot of it has to do with realizing what's in our control and what's not. I mean, Dr. Hunter, I bet if you could, you would just erase this whole COVID-19 and we could go back to school normally, but that is not in your control, unfortunately.
I think we'd all agree on that.
I think it's also just the general end of the semester stuff, like exams kind of just ended. So we often have a lot of big tests or projects that kind of are planned out right for the end of the grading period. So I think and generally people are kind of glad that kind of stuff is over so they can kind of just relax again because all the big assignments kind of were usually mostly over by Friday.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, girls. It's really helpful to hear your perspective on what's going on. And it's also gratifying, I know, to Dr. Hunter and to us to hear the successes and the things that do go well, and to hear that, even in a remote environment, you're still feeling supportive, because we are all so thankful to the teachers who make that happen and who create that environment. And so that's really good to hear. And at the same time, we agree and acknowledge that of course, this isn't ideal, and we all can't wait to get all the students back in the building. And we'll get there as soon as we possibly and safely can, right? So don't ever feel that we're going to settle for this forever, because we can't wait to have you all back in the buildings when we can do that.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you want to lead us off on item 3?
Well, do we have any chairs and liaisons reports?
I could talk about the policy subcommittee meeting that we had on January 20. And we are bringing the recommendations we made from that meeting to today for your approval. We had representative from MASC, Dorothy Presser, join us kindly. That's what I have to report from the meeting, unless someone has anything to add.
Good.
Good discussion.
Why don't I do I'll keep this very quick because it's Concord. I know we're talking ed plan later, but I'll just kind of update for everybody that the Concord Building Committee had a public community forum last night. Was it last night or yes, yesterday? I'm losing track of time. It was very well attended. I think by the end, am I right, Laura? There were probably 80 attendees or so, which is great. Maybe this is another silver lining of COVID. It is once in a while, it can be easier for people to get to these things. There were lots of great questions, which I saw just from the great answers coming at them. But it's really good. I think we're in a good position. We're getting a lot of people engaged, and I'm doing a lot of work on kind of setting up more outbound communications for the building committee. So there's a lot going on there. We haven't had another building committee meeting since we last met. So I think that's it for updates on building project, but it was very successful. And there will be more if people are looking for more. There will be the next few community forums will be, the next one will be late February, and then it'll be in early April. So there will be multiple more touch points still, as well as some focus groups on specific topics. So looking for lots of community input before we finalize the plan, of course.
So I might follow on with that and say that the School Building Committee Design Subcommittee will meet next Thursday, Feb. 4, 7:30, public meeting on Zoom. And we anticipate looking at the most recent work on what is called the space summary. That's how the educational needs are translated into conceptual design as part of feasibility that will then ultimately lead to the schematic phase, all before a perhaps fall special town meeting when we'll know a lot more about the size and scope of the project.
Or can you clarify whether that's 7:30 a.m. or p.m.?
Forgive me. Yes, thank you. Yeah, 7:30 a.m. Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
Figured, but wanted to clarify for everyone.
And there is a sustainability subcommittee meeting Thursday at 8 a.m. if anyone's wanting a meeting this week.
So I can report that I attended the audit subcommittee for the town of Concord, and we looked at the town of Concord audit, which was all in order and very satisfactory for fiscal 20. And we will next be looking at the auditor's report for the region, and I'll report to you as soon as we do that. There was a town caucus last night, one of the most fascinating events I've been to of late, where, and I think if I'm correct, Kate Hodges, our assistant town manager, was instrumental, probably with her team, on organizing what you would have thought was a mini drive-in theater at Harvey Wheeler Community Center. It was in fact voting from your car, listening to a FM transmitter, so you could hear Mike Lawson preside over the caucus, and we voted either by hand waves, which could be confused with one keeping themselves warm if they were standing outside, or more definitively, believe it or not, flashing of headlights for ayes and nays as we moved along. It was really a brilliantly done event. And we can report, and thanks to these folks for stepping up. Carmen Reese nominated as moderator. These are all nominations now. Linda Escobedo, Carlin Reed, and Henry Dane nominated for the ballot for select board. I put in my name for re-election for the school committee, and Tracy Morano did the same. And then Stefan Bader stepped up for 5 years on Housing Authority. Charles Phillips for a 2-year term on the same committee, and Stephanie Trobach for a 1-year term. So once again, the town of Concord mustered at least one volunteer for every one of these jobs. Right now, the select board race is indeed a race, and people should know this. We have until February 4th to submit 50 signatures if we wish to be on a ballot for service on a town committee. So we always want to encourage every possible kind of citizen participation in local government. And Sarah, that's, I think, what I've got on the report side.
You want to report on the FinCom guidelines?
Yes, lovely. Yes, please.
So I just pulled it up. So the FinCom met and set guidelines, preliminary guidelines, is that the correct term, for the Concord Public Schools in the town of Concord at 1.81%, and for the region, because of the assessment shift, to 3.9%.
And the town had a preliminary, the same as CPS, if I'm correct.
That's what, yeah, I did say that, sorry.
Good, thank
And
you.
we are meeting with the Carlisle Finance Committee tomorrow night. 7:15 is our slot.
Great.
Can I just comment on that, how the region is a little bit higher because of the assessment shift, and the fact that I guess I appreciate that they see that. We also, I think we try to be clear about kind of the increase when we're talking about our budget. That does not mean that our budget will have a 3.9% increase, because the assessment shift isn't part of the budget. It's just how the total budget is assessed to each town. So even though that says 3.9% increase to Concord, that's the increase of Concord's assessed numbers that they're talking about, which does not mean a 3.9% increase to our regional budget.
Correct.
That clear for everybody?
Yeah.
Because that can be
Very good.
confusing if you haven't dealt with this before.
Very good point. So we're referring to the number of Concord students relative to Carlisle and vice versa, not the overall budget number.
Right. So since the balance is shifted towards Concord, our cost, so to speak, will go up that much. But it might be, and I don't know the numbers, it might be that, you know, the budget can only go up by, I don't know, 1.8 or 2% in order for the assessment to conceivably stay at that 3.9 or whatever. Again, I don't know what the budget number would be, but it will be lower than 3.9 to stay within that guideline.
One of my visions would be that we don't talk about the enrollment numbers as synonymous with operational, to your point.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to
top, because it has nothing to do with an operational increase.
Exactly.
But that's a different night.
Yeah. So I guess that's why I wanted to point it out, that we're not, that it is different. We're not talking an operational increase here.
I just wanted to add, in terms of planning for future budgets and this year's budgets, Carlisle has been assisting Concord with projections of what our regional student numbers will look like in coming years. So that should definitely help in figuring out, you know, being prepared for any changes. And that shift is going to go towards Carlisle again. And I would just remind that, you know, we don't know what sales of homes will look like, and where students will be coming after post-COVID. Our school has remained open, which is unusual. So families might find that important when they're looking at where they're settling in and where they're bringing their students, which district.
Thank you.
And I watched the Board of Health meeting, and it did raise concerns of mine where I think they're getting sort of overwhelmed, I would say, with the vaccine rollout on top of their current responsibilities regarding COVID in Concord. And this is just the Concord Board of Health. So I just think we should be very mindful of, you know, where the vaccine rollout is going to take these already overworked nurse, director of health, and how we sort of compensate for that as a town.
Sure. And we're very cognizant of that and have really been working to be less reliant on Trish and her support.
Right.
She's there when we need a phone call, but she's trained us really, really well.
Right.
And now we're running a lot more independently. And she's a consult, and very much part of that shift since the holidays was because we knew her attention had to go to the vaccine. So agreed.
And I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm very much hoping they move the teachers up in the line.
Yeah, that's part of my report. That it went the other way yesterday with the governor's announcements. Yeah. And I'm not, please, nothing of this is begrudging the at-risk people who need it ahead of the teachers.
Of course not.
Of course not. But it does sound like it's going to take longer because those over 75 and those 65 and older with conditions have been put in front of phase 2 with the teachers, educators and staff all after that. So we're not sure.
For your report.
Yeah, you're right. That's coming. Yeah. So we're not sure what the details of that look like, but it does look a little further out than we had thought.
Sarah, should we move to correspondence?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I just want to note that that stress that Cynthia is talking about is a phenomenon that the entire country is seeing right now. It's been in the papers lately, and so it's good good to think about it.
Yes, Sarah, before we move on to correspondence, just wanted to let you know, I do have another meeting to go to at 7, and I will be leaving a few minutes before 7. And I leave this to your discretion if you wanted to move the action item of the ed plan or not. It's completely up to you. I just wanted to let you know that I'll be leaving before 7.
Well, that's interesting because that's a Concord thing. It's after we
Okay. All right.
during the region.
Okay.
But that's a reminder to be efficient tonight, so let's
Right.
press on.
Maybe we can get through the regional part
You
quickly.
know. Sarah, I can report one piece of correspondence in regard to middle school math, one in regard to electromagnetic frequencies in the schools, and third and finally, a reply from Commissioner Riley regarding our motion and letter to him about being mindful of the stressful impact of a full regimen of student testing this year. And his reply was he's sympathetic, but not enough to have that override the need to assess performance because of the uncertainties about student progress this year. It was, I thought, a well-crafted letter.
Yeah, and that letter was the only correspondence that I had on behalf of the region.
So with that, Dr. Hunter.
Thank you. I'm going to hit highlights here. One was the MCAS, so I'll just allude to what that means for us. The only information that's been rolled out from DESE is grades 3 through 8, where they're presenting a modified version of the test with less time attached to it in a formative nature, meaning the high stakes piece is not attached. We're going to go through the motions. We still have some of those concerns that we voiced of how it's reliable and standardized in this environment, but it is what it is. The timeline is April and May as of right now. We have not heard information on the high school test administration. They had a January option that then they canceled, so we haven't heard what's coming next. The Board of Ed was meeting today to talk about competency determination alternatives for the class of 2021, which I expect passed. I didn't get a chance to see their outcome, which essentially means that you don't have to pass the MCAS to graduate. As long as you have credits in those courses, you're allowed a diploma, which is what we had last spring. So really what we're eager about is the impact to the kids that are now juniors who didn't take it last year, sophomores, the sophomores who would normally be taking it. Like, this is stuff we're waiting to hear more on. So we're going to get ready. I'll be honest to say, we're going to go through the motions. I still question how we're getting accurate data. We have a lot of places we're getting accurate data. I just am unsure of the reliability of it under these conditions. So other things I'll highlight then are somewhat COVID related in terms of asymptomatic testing, which we spoke about at a meeting recently. Looks ready to test interested staff on Thursday. The school nurses have been working since we met, and we've connected with Brad at CIC, and they've been incredibly responsive. Things are really coming together. What a great decision. Thank you for that, to start with the staff and get it all figured out. So the state has also released the follow-up information preliminarily in terms of the subsidized program. That looks like a timeline of the week of February 8th through the end of March that would be pertinent to them subsidizing cost. So that is when we would start to offer the testing to kids. So it looks like we'll have 2 weeks of staff, and then hopefully start to bring the kids in the week before the break. So far, plans are all coming together really well, because we've got a really couple of amazing point people in district who've taken this on and are leading it and liaisoning, and it's all coming together. As of the latest survey data, which obviously is getting firmed up as we get ready to actually test, we had about 400 staff interested in being tested of 700 across K-12. We were up at about 900 kids out of 3,300 K-12. And I expect there's just a lot of people waiting for more information, waiting to see how it goes. The most common question I had was about quarantining and the impact there and trying to understand how the downtime worked if you're in the positive pool. So we've been answering that and trying to we'll definitely get more of that out as the next couple of weeks come together. So that feels really good. In terms of other COVID pieces, we are seeing the numbers slow some. For sure, since the early part of January, we've had 109 cases now across the schools. Many times the kids have been in quarantine or the staff, and so they aren't a direct impact as close contacts. That's a good sign of our protocols and the systems working. Just to remind you, we still have very tight processes in terms of 14-day quarantine. That is the most conservative of the options presented by DPH, which aligns with the other districts around us. CDC and DPH have put out 7-day or 10-day options. We're sticking with 14. We're still asking if anyone in the house has symptoms that everybody stay home until there's a test run, which has been actually really important. I don't want to stay with that because that's containing contacts of contacts and really being conservative. But it has mattered a few times that we just minimized the exposure at the school and minimized close contacts and contact tracing through that. The travel order continued to insist that people get tested when they get back. We did see another little spike of that over the 3-day weekend for Martin Luther King. Obviously, we're going to start sending information out about February. But it's good to feel the numbers are slower that first week after the break, just like after Thanksgiving was the busiest. And then I think my other highlights really are just in terms of budget, which you're not going to hear much about tonight, but we are really working hard at pulling those budgets together through the building level leaders, and Jared's spending a lot of time aggregating numbers, and then we review them and come back. So it's coming. Next week's updates will be about where we are in the process. We're still going to be working for sure, due to really bring you budgets at the end of February, I would say. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm spending a lot of time on the building project and working on keeping that information flow going as the designers rework things like Court talked. And that's actually been, that's such a forward-thinking activity. It's been a lot of fun to keep giving them information of what's happening and what we're hoping for. And I'll talk more on that when we get to the ed plan if you'd like. So I skipped over a lot, so if you have any questions on anything, we can certainly talk on it.
Thank you. I'll come back to COVID for one moment and say what I think we're all thinking, and that is that we are appreciative. We're hugely grateful to everybody for the hard work they're doing, for the sacrifices they're making, for the choices they're making to keep our schools safe. It is really everybody's business to pull this off. So you can provide the leadership, but without everybody pulling with you, Laurie, we don't get to do what we're doing at Concord and Concord Carlisle.
No question.
Questions, comments for Dr. Hunter on the report?
Yeah, the CDC just came out with a new report saying that the school spread is almost zero. It's just so very low.
Yeah.
And
We'd agree with at this point, which is good news, right?
Yeah. So the spread is outside of school. So
Yes.
I just think it's so important for people not to travel. I know people are, just so wanting to do that. And it's just, I can't emphasize enough how important it is not to travel and not to gather. So people could keep it up for another, I hate to say it's going to be 4 or 5 months at least for the rest of the school year.
Yeah, certainly the patterns we've seen are travel, the informal small get-togethers with people that is the second. And then, of course, the familial spread. So for every case, you often will get 2 or 3 more because all the siblings get it too. So, but yeah, agreed.
Lori, if in the time between now and when we start or when the potential date for families to start getting tested, I've gotten a lot of calls saying, can we have more information? You know, I know you've been answering the one-off calls, but if I know I hate to like think of more work for you, but just thinking about if there can be some communication that maybe summarizes what the intent is, what we, what the protocols are, what we seek to accomplish by, you know, that kind of stuff. I think that would be helpful. I'm wondering if that's why maybe the responses are lower than at least I would have expected.
That may be. I'll tell you the timeline I was on. I knew we needed to do that. I was waiting for the state to give me a little more from them, and that just happened Friday.
Yeah, that document was really good that I read last night.
Now I'll make it the priority over the next day or two. I still don't know what our start date would be exactly, but we'll
But if it's that mid-February, I mean, that's some time at least to get something together more formal.
Yeah. And I'll just name my purpose, and we haven't really we've had some of this conversation. Right now, we're trying to, I think, identify, you know, anything we don't know because we don't have asymptomatic information. And I think my goal right now is preserving what we have. And it'll be a leg, for sure, a piece of the puzzle as we look on how to open more fully. I don't think it's the only piece of the puzzle. I think it's an important piece, though. So
Awesome.
Thank you, Alexa. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to extend a big thank you to Lisa Koski. I'm in awe watching, you know, how hard everyone is working to keep kids safe and families safe at home and teachers safe, and just understanding that that they are working beyond the hours of school time, is, you know, on their private time when it's dinner time for them, and they are making calls to make sure that they can answer any contact tracing questions. It's amazing. It's such dedication to public health and to health of all of us in the community. I just wanted to make sure that that message gets out there. As a parent, as a school committee member, we only get a window of how things work if we see that through, you know, our own students. So just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Thank you.
Yeah, Court named it right. This is a huge team effort from the families and their engagement and communication with us and choices to the staff. And it is a 24/7 endeavor here, but that's how we stay open. So, and that's how people stay safe. And everyone's doing their part. So thank you.
So that's a perfect segue. Speaking of one doing their part, Dr. Hunter has been doing her part. Heather, I wonder if we can turn to you for just a quick review of our status with our evaluation responsibilities, please.
Yes, definitely. I can do a pretty quick update on this. As we all know, we agreed on a process back in the fall for our superintendent evaluation process, which includes a mid-year update in January. So the mid-year update, really the goal is not to do a, you know, public evaluation or anything like we do later. That's for the spring. It's really to make sure that each committee member is touching base with the superintendent and getting a feel at that point for where we are on the goals, and making sure that each party is on the same page and there aren't any surprises that are in the works for the spring. So our process, and I've sent an email to all of you, so you've all seen it, but just to review it now, there are 3 parts to it. The actual update from Lori is 1. Number 2, individual school committee member meetings with Lori. And then 3, a brief summary of that process, just to kind of wrap it up and confirm that we've done it all. So I think the most important thing to point out is that instead of asking Lori to create yet another overview of all she's done, since she already does that for us in what we just saw, the superintendent report, the collection of those superintendent reports from the beginning of this year until now is going to be considered as a packet, her update. So I've sent those all to you, at least the first 3, and now we add tonight's as the 4th, and that becomes our update packet. So everybody should go through those, take a look. Obviously tonight's is the most recent, but it is a progression there. And then set up a meeting with Lori. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we all have them set up. Erin has reached out to do that with each of us. So hopefully everybody has time on the calendar. Touch base, make sure everything looks good, ask her any questions you need to. And again, make sure that there aren't any surprises in the works for the spring. And then at our next meeting, assuming that has all happened, I will wrap up like this again and say, great, that's all happened. Everybody should be feeling good about where we are. And then we circle back again come spring when we're planning the final evaluation. So that's the process. Any questions or thoughts or anything on that?
All right, thank you, Heather.
Sure, no problem.
So, Sarah, I think we'll move toward now school committee goals.
Yeah.
And we have in our attachment the goals that we last discussed, looked deeply at, discussed in October. And it's our opportunity to put our finger on our own pulse, so to speak, and provide and share feedback about our own efforts and performance as we try to serve the public good on behalf of the schools. Sarah, I'll just lead off briefly and then hush up. The first goal was very centered on COVID-19, a safe and successful educational experience that addresses health risks and equity challenges within the Concord and Concord Carlisle schools. And we have key actions in progress that is underway, including policy work that relates to student equity and educational delivery. It calls out the fact that we want to pay attention, especially among so many other things, educational delivery to non-traditional learners and students receiving special services. If a person were to say that everybody's a non-traditional teacher and learner this year, they wouldn't be far off the mark. But we know that they all deserve our special attention. In regard to students receiving special services, among the experts among us is our Student Services Director, Ruth Gruby. We can expect we'll be getting a report and dialogue with her no later than April. Second one, fiscally sustainable budgets that support the core values and missions of the Concord and Concord Carlisle schools. And this is certainly underway with much more to follow next week as budget work is being done by Mr. Stanton and Dr. Hunter and every school building leader. We know that some modeling of regional funding apportionment is underway, and we'll see results perhaps in about a month's time. We have conversations going on with some stakeholders in the community around facility use and fees, which is part of our second set of actions around goal number 2. And the monitoring and understanding task has been made so much more possible for us with Mr. Stanton's 1,100 level reporting. We're going to see that again tonight. Third one is the middle school project. I think we've said enough about that. It's well underway. Just a reminder, that's a town project about a school, but technically a Town of Concord project. 4, policies, policy review and revision, and Fatima, on behalf of her subcommittee, reported on that tonight. 5, superintendent evaluation, and we've just covered that. People know that that is well underway and properly so. Followed by community engagement, communication and transparency, opportunities for the community to engage with and hear from the school committees and better understand school committee practices. This, I think, is happening reasonably well, although the community needs to weigh in here. They are the judge, community members are, but we hope that our meetings in the electronic format are making us more accessible, not less. and that we haven't closed out any other communication opportunities other than physically gathering at the Ripley building. I think everything else is fully underway. Next, as important as any other, cultural competency, provide leadership to achieve district cultural competency, equity and anti-racism goals and objectives. This is where we have had the benefit of Kristen Herbert and Andrew Nemici, with Dr. Hunter leading many of these efforts, not the least of which is our hiring practices and efforts. We've looked at very recently data that speaks to gaps that we might try to fill. I think we all understand much better the windows and mirrors metaphor that is not a metaphor to people living an experience in our schools. It's something rather real. Lastly, negotiations where we have bargaining units requiring our attention for their contracts. So that's a quick overview of what was on our plate. As highlighted goals, it doesn't mean that other requirements of a school committee have disappeared, but rather these were ones that we wanted to keep front and center this year. And with that, Sarah, I think we'll invite comments.
Yep, that sounds great.
What can we improve, folks? I didn't say, how can you work any harder? I said, what can we improve?
Well, if no other comments first, my comment's going to be, wow, we're doing a great job. We're doing well in all of these. Can we improve and do more? Of course. But I will say, all jesting aside, there have been some years on school committees where you feel like you write goals and then halfway through the year, you've worked on so many other things that you could barely remember what your goals were and you hadn't touched any of them. So I will say it is gratifying to go through there. And again, that's not to say that we've finished everything on that list, but I feel like we are doing a good job this year at using our goals as our roadmap and focusing on them. We've been very focused on cultural competency, obviously on COVID, on all of these things. And so to me, that is a successful year and group as a school committee already, because we are using the strategic plan and our goals as our guide and we're focusing on them. And I think that's incredibly important because it doesn't always happen.
I think so.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think that a big part of that is just we've got the liaisons and the committees and all that stuff in a really good place. I think we have a good dynamic in our group, and I think they were all well tasked.
Yes, and that is a huge value because it doesn't always exist.
Fatima, were you going to say something? You're on mute, Fatima.
No problem.
No, I just concur with what has been said. I really enjoyed working with this group. As Dr. Hunter mentioned, it is a young school committee. It's like to be called that. And we still, have quite a learning curve in front of us. But I think we've been doing a nice job and I've enjoyed working together.
And I just wanted to add, this year is probably I could not see any more work and busier year than this year. So so looking at our goals as a school committee goals, I cannot see any more room to add additional goals to our plate. And the ones that we are looking at and we are working on, they are SMART goals because we are getting the reports. We are following up on each goal, just about in every meeting that we are in preparations for every meeting that we are coming to. So I think this was a good. The goals were well written for this year.
Thank you. Alexa, please.
Yeah, to echo what sort of Eva said, I think this is a good reminder of why you look for streamlined goals. This was a challenging year and we didn't let it run away for us. And we've stayed focused, I think primarily because the goals have been focused. So, I think we should all write it down in whatever little notebook we use. I think it's so important. I think it's just so critical because we've just been able to be laser focused on the very, very few things that are really critical for the district. And no one's gotten mired in, nonsense and muck, which I'm pleased about. That's great. Mm-hmm. And I love working with you guys. So that's helpful too.
Thank you. Cynthia?
My silence is agreement.
Cynthia is always efficient. Now, do we all sing Kumbaya? Because this is very nice.
Not until I echo those things. The hard work is made possible because it's a pleasure to work with such professional, committed colleagues. I think we have a long haul in front of us because we have the town meeting to look at. That is going to intensify pressure. We have the negotiations that are so numerous. We have the building project, which has a tough timeline, and the uncertainties that we encountered at the beginning of the pandemic have been replaced by some other still COVID-related uncertainties. It's all still on our plate, and it's only intensifying. So I think the fact that we support each other as well as we do is going to hold us in good stead. I appreciate it as well. Thank you. Yeah. Sarah, back to you.
Well, do we have Jared back?
So I was going to ask if
can we move to policy committed to the second reading of the policies and.
Yes. So he's double booked tonight. If you could do the policies first, he will be here when you're done.
I move we take up item 8 out of order. We take it up at the present time.
Second.
No, I think we want item 7B. Second reading of school committee policies.
Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. Right, you are.
And then we can go and then into 8 for the vote.
There you go. Yep. 7. Yep. Okay. 7B. So moved. Move 7B up till now.
Second for both committees.
Roll call. I see Alexa talking. I think she assented.
Sorry.
Booth, aye for both.
About aye for both.
Ms. Dead, aye for both.
Mustafi, aye for region.
Rainey, aye for both.
Wilson for region.
Okay, so.
We'll let Jared catch his breath and do these. Thank you for that. Corzo, do you want me to hop in on these and just remind you what we?
Yes, if you'd be so kind. The two in front of us are student discipline and bullying prevention, files JIC and JICFB, respectively. For the public, know that on our website, concordps.org, it's an easy 2 clicks away to get to the policies.
Yes. And so this is quick as well. Student discipline, we had considered changing it. You'll remember some of this. And then as we looked with the attorney and talked with her, we decided not to. So you're receiving the policy that was in place essentially a year ago. It had some suggestions that we're not proposing. So we're just revalidating our commitment to the policy as it was. And the bullying prevention policy, we've added the legal definitions to cyberbullying. And so that's really fleshed out now in accordance with Mass General Law. So those are the proposals.
Town meeting, as all the central office folks are.
All right, we're picking up some background. If that might be you, take note. Thank you. Policy subcommittee, anything to add?
No.
All right, so given that, we would entertain a motion to adopt file JIC student discipline and JICFB bullying prevention.
So moved for both committees.
And a second, please.
Good for both.
Discussion on the motion,
Anderson, I for both.
and Booth, aye for both.
Aye for both.
Instead, I for both.
Mustafi for region.
Rainy eye for both.
Wilson for region. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jared Stanton, we understand you're operating multiple screens, multiple meetings tonight. So
I am in.
we don't know how you look
meetings at
so.
once.
We don't know how you look so calm
Power
and
of Zoom
organized.
here. So one thing I can't do is I can't share my screen because I'm on my other computer.
I can
But
do that
the
for you.
variance report is in the packet. So just quickly starting with the 1000s, as you can see, we are in very good shape at this point. We have an unencumbered balance of $4,152,000. The programs with other districts is still in the negative, and the reason for that is I'm still working on transferring monies to Circuit Breaker, as well as, excuse me, the IDEA grant. So we're in pretty good shape for January 26th. So this is the 1000 function. If you look at the other report, this is the one that has the 100 function, and that gives about a 55. I'm trying to open it up. About 55 line, and you can see for the most part we are in balance. There is a $13,000 difference here in the paraprofessional lines, or the 2330. That just needs to be reclassified some monies to the security account. We have not done that, or the parking lot account, I should say. And then again, the 9000 series. And I opened up the wrong report. I apologize.
You want me to put it on the screen and you can do a quick?
There we go. Nope, there we go. I'm sorry. So the 1000 function was the right report. I opened up the CPS. As you can see, again, everything is in balance except for the school security. My apologies. The school security, 8251, and that is because of I believe it's the security officers. We budget them and then reclassify them to the parking lot account, usually at the end of the year. And then you can see at the bottom, the 9000 series, that is the tuitions, and just showing you exactly which functions are causing it to be in deficit right now, and we will get that in good standing.
Jared, would it be reasonable to assume that we won't be able to charge much of that security to parking because we don't have the revenues this year, and this was one of the COVID anomalies at the high school financially?
Yeah, but we did not, if you remember, we budgeted about half that amount, so we weren't depending on that. So I feel comfortable that we'll be close to being able to charge what we budgeted out of that account to that account. So, and right now, it being 8251, I do believe that we will be able to charge that to the parking lot account.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
And Jared, I noticed there's a very large on the computer instructional equipment, almost 400K.
Mm-hmm. So that's because if you remember, we prepaid for last year, and we decided not to lower the budget because of that. So this is right now a surplus, and it might be something that we decide to prepay FY22's amount with that money.
Okay.
So that is untouched and just sitting there for, and as we go through the budget, that will be some of the decisions we have to make.
Okay. Got it.
Other questions? Jared, thanks to you and your team for the good work that makes us feel confident this is nicely in order. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Sorry about the my rush here.
Not a bit. We understand.
Kidding. We're all impressed
Thank
that
you.
you're time traveling and being in two places at once.
I have 5 screens right now in front of me. It's really intimidating myself. I'll see you all in a few. Thank you.
All right.
See you.
Yep. Okay. If there are no questions and no comments on anything, I think that we can move to adjournment for the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
I will move to adjourn the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
Second,
Anderson, I.
Booth, aye.
About aye.
Ms. That aye.
Mustafi, aye.
Rainey, aye.
Wilson, I. Many thanks.
Very good. Thank you all.
Forward to
The-
seeing
Enjoy the
you
rest of
next
your night.
time.
Bye, girls.
Bye.
The Concord Public Schools School Committee remains in session, and if Mr. Stanton is off to his next meeting, I would ask that we hear a motion to take up the item 11, the middle school education plan, please.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
And the motion is seconded. Those in favor, roll call, please.
Anderson, I.
Booth, aye.
About aye.
Ms. That aye.
Rainey, aye.
And let me preface this with the fact that the Ed Plan has required a lot of attention by a lot of people across the middle school and at the central administration. The version that we have right now is perhaps a little bit taxing for us because what we're seeing is actually all the markups that are going to lead us to a final version. In fact, it is the final version, but it hasn't done the cleanup because we haven't knocked out, or Dr. Hunter hasn't knocked out the references to all of the edits or changes or qualifications or explanations that have emerged since we saw the earlier version. So with that, Lori, if you'd care to pick that up.
Sure. So I think the reason it looks so messy is because I thought I heard a request to be able to see the changes. So we can't do that in Google Docs very easily. So we pulled it out to Word and gave you the track changes version. Obviously, we're not going to leave it like this, but I thought it was the simplest way to show you what had changed since the last time you saw it, because the document keeps growing and getting bigger. I don't want to go through all of them. I don't know if you have questions. A lot of it is, and I guess I'll remind you that I had feedback from you folks. I had feedback from some members of the building committee. I had feedback from the design team, and we were trying to really incorporate all the different pieces of feedback we were hearing, and trying to capture those best that we could. I think we fleshed out some pieces at the end. I think that's what I'm going to take you to, because that was what I thought I heard most from all of you was identifying some more support for the ways in which a gymnasium and auditorium pertain to the educational environment at the school, as well as fleshing out the small pullover spaces, is what we've been calling them, in between classrooms for small group work, as well as the team commons. So that was a big intent, was to highlight some of the usage of those. I think I'll leave it at that just because it's so large, but I'll take any other comments or questions.
I think it's important to note that this is not a space plan. This is an education plan, nor is it intended to definitively call out what shall be or shall not be in that school. There are, on careful reading, some tough choices still to be made, because the Ed Plan speaks of what is and what must be, but it also speaks to aspirations. And those aspirations have to meet the reality as defined by the town of Concord. We know that it's not expected to answer for the design team every possible question they might have. Rather, we need reasonable assurance that nothing that happens would be terribly misaligned with this document. Now, it doesn't sound like a very high bar. The bar is indeed higher than that, but the point I'm trying to make is it's not expected to dot every T that would lend a design team to know exactly how to lay out a building. They have to bring their interpretive expertise to us and then have this iterative process with the building committee to have this result in a schematic design that would then go to construction documents later down the road. Is that a good way to say it, Heather? What do you think?
I do, and I think to me the final piece to add is that when they bring their plan, there will also be a response to this ed plan. So that, like you said, this isn't a prescriptive call for a building has to be exactly A, B, and C. It's here are our goals. And they will bring us a plan that responds to those goals. And in many places they'll say, okay, we built you this space because you needed this. And in other places they might say, well, your goal was this, and there wasn't room for a specific space for it. So, we've incorporated it into these spaces. So they will come back with us to say, we don't have every wish list item in here in your plan, but here's how we've addressed your high level goals, right? And I think, so to me, that's very important, which brings us back to the document that we have, which says, we want this to be a document that says, here are our goals. This doesn't define what the building look like, but here are our goals educationally, and how are we going to address those goals? And that's what this is. So yes, I agree. And that's how I would kind of wrap it up myself.
The only, to adopt the document is to adopt it with the caveat that the formatting will be tightened up. The editor's remarks will be pulled out. So it's just a clean document. The only change, albeit a very minor one, that I would ask is that the body of the text does not reference the school committee's adoption date. We adopt a document without a reference to our adoption, and then that adoption reference can be added after the document has been approved. Because we can't adopt a document that states something that's going to happen in the future because we don't know it yet. It's a minor technicality, but I'd like to see.
Yeah, that was a recommendation from the design team with a big assumption. You're right. We'll obviously have to change it.
We'll throw it on the front cover after the vote. That's all.
That's yours to tell me what to do. That was a design team recommendation.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that would be fine with me as long as somehow the date is on there. If it's not in the body, then on the cover approved 126. I would agree with you, Court, in that after we approve it, it would be cleaned up. Obviously, I made that assumption as I read through it. My comment was going to be, thank you for leaving it in the changes tracked format, because it was so much easier for me to go through this and understand what was different from before. So I was very much appreciative of that. And I liked the last paragraphs at the end that specifically addressed the gym and auditorium and everything, and the slight change in wording in the executive summary that says it's basically a couple of places instead of we do to we will. So I appreciated the changes. I really appreciated the format, actually. And if I'm making my comment, would be very much in favor of adopting this, pending, accepting all the changes, of course, but that I think is a given, the formatting piece.
Other comments? I'm mindful of the time. Fatima is leaving for another meeting at 7 p.m.
Oh yes, let's let Fatima comment next.
Yes, again, I concur with what has been said, and the most notable thing is it was actually the easiest version for me to read, and the changes I think made it possible, and I appreciate it. It was a lot of work for the team that's been working on it, and I really appreciate it. Yes, once the changes have been made, I think it will be ready to vote for it, again, pending those changes. Yes, and I trust that they will be made.
Thank you. Cynthia?
So I concur with the comments. I do have a strong request to our two representatives to the building committee, is that when this, which is a very big part of the space summary and the plan, once that's not been finalized, once it's presented to the building committee, I would like the building committee representatives to come present it to us. Because I really think as a school committee, we should really weigh in on the space summary.
So
The
the
space summary
FinCom is getting the attention of the school building committee simply on the basis of a request. It didn't require a formal request. I think we could consider this a request that the school building committee can honor. Do you not, Heather?
Oh, I would think so. Yeah.
That we'll have representatives come to our meeting. We don't, as a school committee, have the authority around this building that the school building committee does, but we have a critical voice, and to have a session devoted to it, as you describe, Cynthia, I think is a really critical piece, a fail-safe, another fail-safe that we put in place for the success of the project. So you got our commitment to see that happens.
And just one sort of piece of minutia, but I would like to see a summary that includes current, proposed, or proposals, and then the MSBA, which is very common in MSBA projects or required.
And we're familiar with that. Sorry.
Yeah, the design team's working with those kinds of numbers right now, so I don't think that'll be a problem.
In fact, that's modeling that we've been practicing for some time. So I think we can accommodate that, and I think it's very useful. This is not an MSBA project, but it's one of our lenses, one of our benchmarks, just for fuller understanding of what Concord wants to do for its middle school.
Yeah.
Not the only one, certainly. We've got other benchmark schools as well. You know. Alexa?
I think the document large looks great. I'm just anxious to see how that design team responds and then how you guys prioritize what we can include. It's going to be quite the adventure.
We're anxious.
I think it looks great. Right?
So it seems like a long process already, and it will continue to be a multi-year process, but we are in a critical time right now. So we do want people to give this their eyes and ears very carefully over the next couple of months, because a lot is unfolding now at this foundational level of the whole project. So I would entertain a motion that we, if we might move on, that we adopt approve would be the language, that we approve the education plan on the premise that the editing notes, the formatting notes, and the other accompanying notes be teased out of it such that it's a cleanly formatted document with the reference to school committee approval date taken out of the body of the plan and put on top of the plan after this vote happens.
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Anderson, aye.
Booth, aye, with thanks to Dr. Hunter's team. It's a lot of authors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Out aye with the same.
Is that I with a big thank you for every member involved in putting it together.
And Rainey, aye.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
That was a big project.
We have one more item, I believe. Let me check the electronic version of our agenda. Yes, indeed. And is Mr. Stanton available, or should we dive in on our own, which maybe we're capable of doing?
I'm going to say goodbye now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fatima, thank you so much.
Have a good night, Fatima.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that we move on to the item that is now before us, item 10, and we're looking at the CPS variance reports, the budget report. This was part of our packet, and I had a couple of highlights on the regional one, which Jared must have anticipated because he spoke to them. I had no notes on my CPS variance report. It looks very much in order to me, but there may be keener eyes than mine. Anything you'd call out for questions, comments, concerns regarding the variance report? What this shows us is that we have of the 40,777,000. We have expended 17 million, encumbered 21 million, with a outstanding balance of something shy of 3 million, which tells us the books are in order and that we have paved the way to get through the balance of the fiscal year, but without a lot of reserves, but with a lot of commitments so that we know where we're going. Commitments meaning.
Yeah, I think I would add to say, things are really on track. Probably, in a year where you build a budget based on a lot of, best predictions that you can make in a year you've never lived before. We're feeling really good about where this budget is at. And I think also really pleased with how the cost center leaders are running their operations right now, because it's allowing us to stay on track with what we budgeted, and even have some cushion here that perhaps we weren't sure we were going to have in late January. So we're feeling good. We're in a good place, and it's going to set us up for a healthy 22 discussion, which, as you know, was part of the goal. Was not that we thought we had extras here, but to see that we budgeted that well in this environment says we can do it again, with still another year of some unknowns, and one will inform the other, of course.
And that's so critical, because we learned in 08 that these economic volatilities have multi-year implications.
Indeed, indeed.
All right, so here.
I would only also comment quickly, only in case there's anybody who's watching this section who didn't watch the regional piece, that if you're looking at the variance under the remaining balance where it looks like there's a $5,000 deficit, that we would be under the assumption that that's the same case as it was with the region, where that is simply being transferred from the other programs area, but through circuit breaker, but isn't transferred yet. And so that won't be an issue, even though it looks like it now.
You're referencing one of the line items, not the bottom line where we.
Right, exactly.
Right. Good. Thank you, Heather.
Right.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, is there a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Anderson, aye.
Booth, aye.
About aye.
Brady, aye.
Dr. Hunter, thank you very much. Thanks to the team that put together everything that came our way tonight. For folks who joined us in the meeting, thank you for your attention. And we will reconvene next week, Tuesday, at probably 5:45. That agenda will be posted shortly. Mr. Stanton, we didn't make a botch of it in your absence. We want you to know.
You're here just in time to say goodnight. He's still connecting.
All right, thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.